let's move along to the Sugar Bowl here with Notre Dame defeating Georgia 23-10. Notre Dame loses to NIU, and then they just go out and win 12 straight games. They got 13 wins for the first time in program history, which is phenomenal for them. Win their first New Year's Six bowl game in over 30 years, which is crazy. It was a very interesting game, and you said it off the top. Both of the defenses, I think, really played well to start the game. A lot of resistance. Then Notre Dame gets a turnover off of a strip sack, one play into the end zone. Then they're able to go into halftime, come out, return the kickoff for a touchdown. And all of a sudden, with the field goal before that, you're looking at 17 points that happened in the span of like 2 minutes. Notre Dame's a really, really good football team, and I feel like we need to center the conversation there. I think Georgia's really good as well, but like Notre Dame is just like that right now.
Yeah, they are. So this game was a rock fight early, right? 0-0 after the first quarter. Points were going to be at a premium because of how well the defenses were playing. Georgia was actually moving the ball better for much of that first half until that fumble touchdown. And you started that, obviously the kickoff return right after halftime. Like, people always talk about the middle eight, the last 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes of the second half. Can't really do it much better than 17 points in less than 2 minutes. That stretches between that. And it completely flipped the game. It allowed Notre Dame to play the way that we've seen them a million times, which is just like run the ball, play great defense. They were throwing it. And again, like, it was tight windows. Like, Georgia's defense was great. Like, the receivers didn't have space, but there were some great catches. Like, Jordan Faison had a couple great catches, and he fought for extra yardage. But they were doing enough that they could then run it, even without Jeremiah Love, who wasn't 100%, wasn't playing. But Riley Leonard is at his best when he's running and when he's fearless. We have worried about that with injuries. We have also said, hey, we want to see more out of him as a passer. You know, we've asked for a lot over the course of the season. But that run where he goes airborne and just like is like, whatever, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get a couple extra yards for Notre Dame to help ice this game away, to help us get to the finish line here. That was peak Riley Leonard. That is who he is. And I think what we saw in this game from Notre Dame, there were a lot of uncharacteristic penalties, but you saw Marcus Freeman make some decisions and some really gutsy calls that said, I got my team's back. Like, I believe they can do this. We can do that whole like line change and try to get Georgia to jump off sides. And then they did, and it paid off. We saw him go for fourth down early in the game. Like, we saw Marcus Freeman coach to win that game. We saw a lot of things that we have seen over the course of the regular season, but maybe not everybody saw it. Or maybe it wasn't nearly at like with this much at stake, but it was such an impressive win because of the way that they did it, because it was things that we have watched them develop and emphasize over the course of the season.
Yeah, and it's interesting with like the chances that Marcus took. And I think part of it is like young coaches are more willing to lean into like how they can win on the periphery of games. We saw it a lot with Dan Lanning through the course of the year. But like, I think Marcus is kind of in that same mold of how he approaches the game. But there's also like this, you know, when you're Georgia and you've been there before and you've won the titles, there might be a little bit more pressure to just like straight up go in there and like not lose a game. Whereas Notre Dame, as we mentioned, like they haven't had heights like this in a little while. Like they're out there like actively doing everything they can to win football games. And I love that approach. I'll say this about Riley Leonard. So Jake Butt was an All-American tight end for University of Michigan, great friend of mine, great friend of yours. He always talked about Jim Harbaugh and how he would compliment guys. And he said, the greatest compliment you can give a player is to call them a ball player, right? And I think Riley Leonard is a ball player. I do not think he is a great quarterback. And it has not mattered for Notre Dame because he gets you the plays when he needs to. He is good enough throwing the football. That throw that he made into the end zone after they got the strip sack was a phenomenal throw. There was coverage underneath. He had to be able to get over that, and it had to fit into a tight window. He did his job on that. Doesn't make those throws a ton, but he can make them. But anytime they need a play, fourth down, we know who it's probably going to. It's Riley Leonard. He's going to keep the ball in his hands, and he's a guy that they trust in that. To your point, they're telling this dude, stop diving over people. Stop doing the flips. You're going to hurt yourself. And he's like, don't give a damn. We got to win. Right. Yeah. And like, I think that
they actually stopped telling him not to do it because they knew that it was pointless.
He's hard-headed. But he's a ball player, though. And I think that's the greatest compliment to Jake's point, to Jim Harbaugh's point, that you can give a guy. He plays ball.
Yes, he does. And I think that, like, it has been really cool to watch him get more comfortable in the offense. He had 2 offseason surgeries after transferring to Notre Dame. And we talked about this at the time. It took a while for him to get into the offense. We were kind of tracking right hand, have a passing touchdown for, X amount of games in the early part of the season. But man, does he figure out how to win games and not lose them, by the way, not make bad decisions. And it is something special to watch what he is doing. And for Marcus Freeman, who obviously knew what was at stake, this was a program that had faltered at this stage, like a New Year's Six level bowl game stage for 3 decades. We talked about the way that they were physically outmanned and outmatched in a lot of those games when they would play SEC teams. And this is a coach that, yes, he's lost to some MAC teams and some Sun Belt teams, but man, does he coach well in the big games. Like,
Sure
these
does.
were the games that Brian Kelly could not win. Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, said,
because he said they couldn't win it.
That can win a national championship. Can't
Crazy.
do it at Notre Dame. Brian Kelly is at home, and Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame are 2 wins away from a national championship, and they've got a roster that can do it. Like, that is a serious roster. It makes me think back about the day when they announced Marcus Freeman got the job and the way the players responded and reacted to Marcus Freeman being their head coach after Brian Kelly left them. Really, really, really cool. One other quick note before we get a little bit, I want to get a couple thoughts on the semifinal games as we match up. The Orange Bowl has James Franklin and Marcus Freeman coaching in this game. There has never been a black head coach who has won a college football national championship. This semifinal guarantees that there will be one coaching for it. There will be a coach in the national championship game, a black head coach, which is very, very cool.
No, it's history that we're watching here. Congratulations to both of those guys in the way that they've built their programs, the way that they've competed this year. But it feels like in the history of college football, it feels like such a long time that we're getting to this milestone. But I'm certainly glad that we're here. 2 guys that I respect. Marcus, I know a lot better than I know James Franklin. But congratulations to both those guys on the seasons that they've had and in the history that they could make here with the win in the Orange Bowl.